A lot going on today, but since Molly Bell brought up the Inglewood election, we have someone who swears he's not campaigning, but the election is on Tuesday. He's a 37-year public safety professional. He's been a general manager and assistant general manager of large municipal organizations for over 23 years, formerly in Inglewood as a police officer for almost 20 years, and where he rose to the rank of Deputy Chief of Police in 1991. He was Chief of Police for the City of Santa Monica. He's running for mayor in Inglewood and wanted to comment on public safety. We've been talking about murders. People, obviously concerned if even one person is murdered, even though in Long Beach and Los Angeles we see lower rates than we've seen since the 60s and 70s. James Butts, welcome to the front page.
Thank you, Dominique.
So you wanted to talk public safety.
I did. But before I started, I wanted to give my condolences to the family of Roosevelt Douglas. He was an icon in the community, and I knew his daughter Kathy very well when I worked for the city. He passed last week, and his services are tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. at First Church of God at Hardy and Crenshaw. So I wanted to say that. Over the last 2 years, we've been on notice here that the city of Inglewood is undergoing a murder crisis, actually. There have been 48 suppressible homicides since 2009. And by suppressible, I mean those that are not officer-involved shootings and those that are not committed domestically where police would have no opportunity to intervene. That averages to one homicide every 2 weeks. Gwen Taylor, a 61-year-old grandmother, was killed at Darby Park in late December by a random shot fired by a male at another male. And 2 days later, a young man named Williams was murdered on Imperial Highway. He was in a wheelchair. New Year's Day, 42-year-old Latino was murdered in his driveway on Olive, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And 2 days ago, we had another walk-by shooting at 109 in Crenshaw. And while all this has occurred, the city being on notice of the crisis, we've been cutting the police department. Since February of 2010, we've lost 13 positions through
But every city is cutting police departments. I mean, cities don't have money right now.
That's absolutely untrue.
Every city is facing budget cuts. You look at L.A., where L.A. is a perfect example, where crime is down, where the mayor came into office on a pledge to increase the police department to 10,000, and it's been an absolute fight to even maintain the levels from attrition. Not forget about adding to levels to reach that 10,000 mark. Actually,
that's not correct. The mayor made a pledge to bring the police department past the level it was when he came into office.
Initially, the pledge was 10,000.
Yes, the department's at 9,949 right now.
Yeah, and the fight right now is to maintain that level.
Exactly, and they have maintained it
so far.
And so, since they have, we've cut ours by 13. In addition to that, there's a plan to furlough every sworn police officer for 130 hours a year. That adds up to an equivalent of another 12 full-time police officer positions when you take that time into account. In addition to that...
So what's the solution to that in a budget crisis?
The solution to that is to prioritize.
So what do you cut?
To determine as a city what core businesses you're in.
Because honestly, you look at Inglewood, you have those cuts are not just in law enforcement. You're cutting park personnel. A lot of positions have been cut in the city of Inglewood.
There are 5 primary reasons that cities exist: to protect public health, public safety, provide for education of school children, provide for infrastructure renewal, and provide for economic and urban renewal. And those are the businesses that you're in. So when you prioritize, you cut positions that don't meet those missions. You consolidate departments so that you can have efficiencies of scale. And finally, you contract out work that is seasonal. For instance, some engineering functions that aren't done year-round, where you don't need full-time people.
Are you talking about privatizing stuff, or are you talking about
I'm talking about contracting.
Eliminating departments?
I'm talking about both.
So, yeah, that's what a lot of cities are doing, which is also very controversial. We're talking about privatizing public functions, which can save money or not.
I'm not talking about privatizing public functions. I'm talking about contracting out seasonal work. For instance, engineering jobs that don't have to be fulfilled year-round. There's a difference. And once you make those tough decisions, then you maintain your priorities. And in this city, public safety has to be a priority, or we will neither attract nor retain our middle-class families, and we will neither attract or retain businesses that want to settle here.
So public safety is the key to all of that, in your opinion?
It's not the key to all of it, but it's one of the core functions that has to be done.
So when you talk public safety, are you talking about a model that includes suppression only, or what you look at what's happening in the city of LA, and I do think they are setting a model nationally for what can be done when law enforcement works in partner with other organizations, community organizations.
Actually, I'm talking about prevention, intervention, and enforcement. Prevention occurs at a very young age, and that's making sure that you have adequate recreation, social, educational structures that help in the development of children. Intervention occurs when youth offend, but you don't want to criminalize them, and you provide alternatives to incarceration and punishment. And when you get to enforcement, it means all the structures have failed: churches, families, schools, when we have to lock up individuals. But I wanted to give you some information as I talk about how the city should be run and how it's been mismanaged. The city's about to make a declaration of fiscal emergency formally, and part of that report reads as follows. The city's precarious financial condition is accentuated by the following irrefutable facts. Its bond ratings are in jeopardy of being downgraded to junk status. Its auditors have already foreshadowed that a warning with respect to the city's ability to continue as a viable municipal organization if deficit spending continues is imminent. That a $17.6 million annual operating deficit represents a loss to the city of $48,219 daily in the absence of curative actions. That continued deficit spending at this rate will exhaust available weak reserves and plunge the city into insolvency before the conclusion of this fiscal year, which is September 30th, 2011. And that such circumstances represent an imminent and substantial threat to public health and safety.
It's Radio Free 102.3 KJLH 514 in the morning. We're talking with James Butts. It is a Radio Free Friday. The phones are packed, and don't worry, we will return to your phone calls, and we have more special guests straight ahead as the show continues. So your solutions are?
At this point, at this late point, a downsizing of government, collapsing of departments.
So you downsize government while increasing the law enforcement?
You have to at least maintain it.
Uh-huh. Okay, so when you say downsizing government specifically, I mean, you said seasonal contracts. Specifically, what do you cut?
Specifically, you look at the organization and you look at those functions that don't meet those 5 core missions that I talked about, and those will have to suffer attrition, job eliminations, early retirements, and maybe layoffs.
When you talk about 5 core functions, talk to 100 people, they'll give you 100 different things that cities are supposed to do. So where do you get that from?
I base it on my experience working in 3 different cities and seeing what makes cities work.
Okay. So you would create a structure where anything that doesn't meet the criteria that you have just outlined as far as what cities are supposed to be doing goes away.
That's oversimplifying what I've said.
Okay, well, say what you meant to say then. You say it how you want to say it. That's why you have a mic.
Well, what I was saying is that what I would do is focus on those 5 core functions.
Right into the mic. Yeah.
I'd focus on those 5 core functions. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean everything would go away, because there's some things that don't seem to directly fit that make a big impact. You have to have libraries. You have to have recreation. You have to have alternatives for youth. And I would make sure that those things are maintained.
Okay, it is 5:16 in the morning, and when we talked off air, you said that your main function in wanting to speak today was to speak to your concern about public safety.
That's correct.
So, without oversimplifying what you're saying, you summarize what you are calling for and what you're asking, the regular citizen, the front page family to do.
The regular citizen actually needs to be informed. We don't have transparent government here in Inglewood. I don't believe the public's aware that we've lost 13 police officer positions since last February, and that the combined impact of the overtime and furloughs that are going to be instituted in the police department will result in the equivalent of 37 full-time officers being removed. I feel that the current mayor has a conflict of interest when it comes to overseeing the budget of the police department. Both he and his assistant are under investigation by the LA County District Attorney.
Okay, now you're getting into campaigning. So let's save that for Tuesday when you and Mr. Tabor can both speak about the campaign. So we're talking about public safety, right?
That is public safety.
Okay, well,
and I do have
you know what? When we're talking about coming on and talking about legitimate news stories that are not campaigning, and I haven't allowed other people to come in here and trash you without you being able to respond. So let's stick to that, okay?
It's not trashing, that's fact. But go ahead.
I just was setting the parameters for you to finish what you were saying.
All right, but in essence, it's time to stop electing the usual suspects in the Inglewood government. We need people that have the background, experience, and professional accomplishments to move the city forward. And right now, we are not focused on the enforcement aspect of this gang problem that we have. We've had this year, we've had 2 murders in 3 days.
So would you replace the police chief?
That's premature.
You're saying that you disagree with decisions that have been made within law enforcement.
I don't believe that enough resources have been devoted to the police department to handle the magnitude of the problem that we have here. We've known over the last 2 years that we've averaged about a murder every 2 weeks on average. This year, we've had 2 murders in 3 days. There should be a multidisciplinary task force which involves the social sector, which involves the LAPD, Culver City, Hawthorne, Sheriff's Department, to work on the gangs that are at the epicenter of this conflict that results in all this death.
Okay, well, I appreciate your stopping by and sharing your concerns with the City of Inglewood and with public safety in general, with the front page family. What would you leave us with this morning?
That it's time for change. It's time for us to elect people to office that have the background and ability and the interest in moving the city forward. And I'm asking for your vote on January 11th.
And if they want to find out more, they can
go to www.jamesbuttsformayor.com. And there's public safety information. There are videos discussing these issues. And there's general community information as well.
Okay, thank you for stopping by on a Radio Free Friday. And good luck on Election Day. It's right around the corner. It's Tuesday.
Thank you, Dominique.
No matter who you vote for, folks, please come out and vote on Tuesday. If you're in the City of Inglewood, do your civic duty. And it's not just the mayor's race. There's city council. There's all kinds of
District 1.
All kinds of fun things you can vote for. So
we need people to vote in this town.
Although these non-presidential elections are not always nail biters, we really have to come out. It does make a difference. Ask Kamala Harris.